The story of love, a highway tale. The sun was low, stretching golden light across the endless stretch of Highway 66. Amelia had been driving for hours, leaving behind a city full of noise and a life that no longer fit. Her old Volkswagen hummed steadily, packed with everything she owned and nothing she still wanted. At a dusty gas station outside a forgotten town, she pulled over. The air smelled of gasoline, freedom, and faint regret. That's when she saw him leaning against a motorcycle, leather jacket cracked by sun and time, eyes hidden behind aviators. He looked like every song about heartbreak she'd ever heard, and yet peaceful. Need help with that map? He asked with a smirk, noticing her frustration with a tattered paper atlas. She smiled. Only if you know how to read dreams. He raised an eyebrow. I'm better with highways. They talked about places they'd been, places they were running from, music that saved them, and the miles that healed them. Names came later. What mattered first was the way silence between them wasn't empty. He rode ahead. She followed in her car. They met again at the next town, then the next. A few days turned into weeks, no promises, just shared miles and coffee at dawn. Love didn't come with fireworks, just with the steady thrum of wheels on pavement, the warmth of his hand brushing hers at a roadside diner, and the way he remembered she hated pickles. Eventually, the road split. He had Arizona, she had Oregon. They stood at the junction, unsure if the highway had given them a moment or a beginning. I don't know where I'm going, she admitted. He touched her cheek. Then let's be lost together. And so they kept driving, not to escape, but to arrive. Somewhere, anywhere, as long as it was together. The sun wasn't just setting, it was spilling, like someone had tipped over a golden bucket across the horizon, and Amelia felt it hit her through the windshield, warm and blinding. Highway 66 stretched ahead like some kind of infinite lifeline, cracked, beautiful, unapologetically wild. Could a road feel alive? Because this one did. It breathed with every mile, whispered in the wind through her half-open window, and dared her to keep going when everything inside her wanted to turn back. Her hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping her grounded, not to the car, but to herself. She had left the city hours ago, that city too loud, too fast, and yet, somehow, so empty. How does a place filled with people make you feel that alone? She didn't even say goodbye. No dramatic farewell, no tears on the doorstep, just a scribbled note on the kitchen counter that read, I'm tired of being everything I'm not. The Volkswagen, her loyal old companion, rattled like a tired dog that refused to quit. It smelled like leather, coffee spills, and freedom and God. What a strange combination that was. Her playlist shuffled randomly a song from childhood, a heartbreak anthem, something instrumental that made her chest feel tight without knowing why. Every lyric felt like it knew her story before she could even live it. Did she have a destination? Honestly, no, and that terrified her, but also thrilled her. The road didn't care about her resume, her missed calls, her parents' expectations, or the way her last relationship fell apart like a sandcastle hit by a wave. All it cared about was that she kept moving. Somewhere between mile marker 248 and 249, she laughed out loud alone in her car, with no one to hear her but the fading sun. Not because anything was funny, but because she finally understood something. This was her beginning. Not clean, not perfect, but real, and wasn't that something worth driving toward? She pulled into the gas station with her fuel light blinking like a heartbeat in distress. The kind of place that felt frozen in time, two rusty pumps, a flickering open sign, and a vending machine with sun, bleached soda labels from a decade ago. A soft wind pushed dust around like it was rearranging forgotten memories. It wasn't on any must-see list. This wasn't a destination. It was a pause. Amelia stepped out, stretched her legs, and inhaled deeply, but it wasn't fresh air she got. It was heat, oil, and the strange perfume of independence and uncertainty. That's when she saw him. No slow-motion entrance, no dramatic soundtrack, just there, leaning against a black motorcycle like it was part of him, like it had carried pieces of his soul across states and back. His leather jacket had seen storms. His boots had tasted gravel, and those sunglasses, they weren't for style, they were armor. He glanced at her just briefly, like he wasn't looking at her but through her, and somehow that was worse. Or better, she couldn't tell, was he dangerous or just deeply tired? His kind of quiet didn't scream, "Leave me alone." It whispered, "I've been alone too long." She was wrestling with a crumpled paper map, the kind only dreamers and the heartbroken still carry, when he called out across the space between them. Voice casual but impossibly steady. "Need help with that map?" There was a smirk, but not the arrogant kind. The kind that said, "I've been lost too." Amelia, caught between sarcasm and surrender, fired back without thinking. "Only if you know how to read dreams." His head tilted. She'd surprised him and herself. "What did that even mean? I'm better with highways," he replied, not missing a beat. And in that second, the kind of second you don't know is important until it's over something shifted. The world didn't tilt. The sky didn't fall, but she looked up from the map. That was something. He walked over, slow and certain, and she realized she hadn't really talked to someone in days. Not like this. Not where every word wasn't weighed down by expectation or history. They spoke about nothing and everything. Where he was going, nowhere, really. What she was running from, everything, maybe. And how gas stations at dusk feel weirdly holy, like confession booths for the lost. And just like that, the map didn't matter so much anymore. He rode ahead, not far, just enough to make her wonder if he'd vanish at the next bend. His motorcycle moved like it knew the road better than time itself, and her little Volkswagen chugged behind, faithful but awkward, like a dog trying to keep up with a wild horse. They didn't plan it. No "meet me here at 5, no exchanging phone numbers. Just a look at the gas station, a nod, an unspoken agreement. That was it. First came the next town, a single diner, a motel with flickering neon, and a shared silence that somehow said more than a full-blown conversation. She found him already sitting at the counter, sipping black coffee like it was medicine for his thoughts. No surprise in his eyes when he saw her, just space on the stool beside him. They didn't talk much. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that wraps around you like a blanket, not smothering, just warm. She ordered pancakes at 7 p.m. He said nothing but passed her the syrup without asking. Who does that? Who notices that quickly? Then came another town and another. A rhythm started to form, slow and uncertain, like two instruments learning to play the same song. He'd take the lead on the road, occasionally glancing in his mirror, just to make sure her yellow headlights were still there. She began to trust the way he rode, not recklessly, but like someone who understood how fast was too fast. They began to share more, not everything, not the heavy stuff, just slivers. He told her about a dog he once had, a scrappy mutt named Rocket that used to chase tumbleweeds like they were prey. She told him about her dream of seeing the northern lights, even though she hated the cold. One night, when the motel heater broke, they sat on the floor wrapped in old blankets and played 20 questions with no score to keep. It wasn't romantic, not at first. It was respectful, safe, easy. And when had anything in her life ever been easy? Some nights, they'd sit on the hood of her car, staring at stars like they were waiting for instructions. Other times, they'd argue about music. She loved lyrics. He loved rhythm. They never settled it, didn't need to. He never asked why she left. She never asked what he was searching for, because maybe they weren't ready to answer those questions themselves. And that was the strange, beautiful part, the absence of pressure. No timelines, no "what are we" talks, just motion, just the road, two people moving forward because backward wasn't an option anymore. And somehow, without planning or forcing, they became each other's pause. Not destination, not detour, just a safe, quiet pause between chaos and clarity. Eventually, and they both knew it was coming, the road split. It didn't arrive with fanfare or some poetic sign from the universe. No thunderstorm, no cinematic music, just a dusty green highway sign with peeling white letters. East to Arizona / north to Oregon. She slowed down first. He pulled over without a word. They stood there in the heat of the afternoon, engines ticking softly, the smell of asphalt and sunburned grass between them. No traffic, just the sound of wind weaving through the open stretch of nowhere. He leaned against his bike, arms folded. She leaned against her car, hands stuffed into the pockets of a jacket she didn't need in the heat. It wasn't cold outside, so why did it feel like something was freezing inside her? "This is it," she said, trying to keep her voice even. Why did it tremble? He nodded once, no dramatic reaction, but his jaw clenched barely. But she saw it, felt it. "I've got people in Arizona," he said quietly. "Not family, just loose ends." She gave a soft laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "I've got nothing in Oregon, just trees and maybe some space to figure out who the hell I am." Silence again, but this time it was sharp. Not comforting, it cut. Was it a question hanging in the air? Do we end this here? Do we become just another good story that lived too briefly? Do we pretend this never mattered? She wanted to say something profound, something to wrap it all up with dignity. Instead, all she managed was, "I don't know where I'm going." His head turned so fast it startled her. His eyes, God, his eyes, like someone had just cracked open a vault. "You think I do?" he asked, voice low, but not angry. Almost wounded. "You think I've been leading us somewhere on purpose? I've been figuring it out a mile at a time." And there it was, raw truth, not romantic, not poetic, just honest. He stepped closer. Not urgently, like he was giving her time to stop him, but she couldn't. "I don't care about Arizona," he said, barely above a whisper. "Not if it means leaving behind the first peace I've felt in years." Her breath hitched. Because yes, that's what it had been. Peace, not butterflies, not obsession. Just the kind of safety you don't notice until it's threatened. He reached out gently, fingers brushing her wrist like a question, not a command. "Then let's be lost together," he said, and it wasn't a solution. It wasn't even a promise. It was permission, permission to not have the answers, permission to want something just because it felt right, permission to choose this, even if it didn't make sense yet. So she looked back at the road both directions, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled without caution, because maybe you don't always need a map when you're not running anymore. They didn't take the Arizona turnoff or the Oregon one, not immediately. They just kept driving straight, no GPS, no plan, no destination pinged into a phone, just the open road stretching forward like a question neither of them needed to answer yet. The sun was lower now, not setting, but shifting, casting longer shadows that danced beside their vehicles like quiet witnesses to the decision they just made. He rode in front again, but this time not far. Close enough that when he turned his head slightly, he could see her in his mirror. And when she smiled that small, knowing kind of smile that said, "We're doing this," he saw it, felt it, matched it. They stopped less often now, not because they were rushing, but because they didn't feel like drifting anymore. There was a rhythm to it all, not just in the miles, but in the way her car seemed to move a little faster, and his bike seemed to soften its roar when she was near, as if their machines understood what was happening before they did. One morning, they watched the sunrise from the roof of her car. He handed her a gas station coffee like it was a bouquet. She handed him a granola bar like it was a confession. They didn't say anything for a while, just sat there, legs dangling off the side, skin brushed with gold and wind. Then he said almost to himself, "Feels different now." She nodded. "Yeah, feels like I'm going towards something, not away. Isn't that the shift that no one talks about? When the running stops being about escape and starts being about arrival, not at a place, but a feeling, a version of yourself that finally makes sense." She started humming while she drove, not because the radio was off, but because some part of her had started singing again. He started waving at strangers at rest stops, something he swore he never used to do. They took photos of signs, of clouds, of each other badly framed, half laughed, perfectly imperfect photos that neither of them would ever post. Just keep, there was a night when the rain came down hard, so hard they had to pull over. They sat in her car, headlights off, thunder rolling in the background, and he reached over, quietly lacing his fingers through hers. No kiss, no big moment, just warmth, just presence, and it meant more than any grand gesture ever could. They didn't talk about the future in specifics, no calendar dates, no "where do you see us in 5 years?" But there was this unspoken understanding now that wherever the road bent, they'd be on it together, not out of fear, not out of accident, but because they chose to be, and maybe that's the real love story, isn't it? Not the falling, but the staying, the steady hum of trust, the shared silence that feels like music, the decision to keep going forward, not because you're lost, but because you've finally been found in someone who sees you clearly and drives beside you anyway. So they kept driving, no map, no rush, just two souls finally aligned with the road, with the sky, and with each other. And for the first time in a long time, they weren't just traveling, they were arriving. Love didn't crash into them. There were no fireworks, no dramatic declarations under a lightning filled sky, no music swelling in the background like in the movies. It didn't need that because this love, their love, didn't scream. It settled. It arrived quietly, like sunlight through curtains in the morning, soft and certain, even when you didn't ask for it. It happened in pieces, in crumbs, in the almost invisible moments that other people would have missed. Like when he started carrying an extra pack of gum because she always forgot hers, or how she always remembered to ask the motel clerk for two room keys even though they never used more than one. How ridiculous is that? And yet, how beautiful. Love was the way he waited for her at rest stops without ever needing to say, "Take your time." It was in how she'd leave her half, full coffee on the dashboard, and he'd drink the rest without asking because they both hated wasting things, especially time. They weren't loud about their affection, no PDA, no endless texts, just presence, a kind of everyday loyalty that people underestimate. She didn't have to impress him. He didn't try to fix her. Isn't that rare? To be accepted without preconditions, without a sales pitch. There was a night when they couldn't find a place to stay town after town. Every inn was booked. She was exhausted, frustrated. Her voice cracked when she said, "Let's just sleep in the car." And he didn't argue. He simply nodded, adjusted the seat, and pulled a blanket from the back. Then he gently tucked it around her shoulders before reclining his own seat beside her. No complaint, no commentary, just "I'm here." She cried quietly that night, not out of sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being understood without explanation. How do you even thank someone for that? You don't. You just stay. You reach across the center console in the dark and hold their hand. Love grew in that silence, in the comfort of not having to perform, in how they could sit in a parked car for 30 minutes after arriving somewhere, not speaking, not rushing, just existing, just being. There were still scars, of course there were. He flinched a little when she raised her voice during a joke, something about the past, maybe. She hesitated before opening up, testing the ground for stability like someone who'd been dropped before. But the beauty was neither of them ran, not anymore. They didn't need matching tattoos or hashtags or the perfect anniversary dinner. They had trust built slow like sunrise. They had laughter that came from the belly, not the mouth. And they had a road not just under their wheels, but between their hearts that neither wanted to turn off from. So no, it wasn't explosive, but it was constant. It was real. And honestly, isn't that the kind of love that actually lasts?